right. Welcome everybody to our webinar. We've excited to be here today. We've got like almost 1,000 people, I think, signed up for this webinar. So this is obviously a topic that people are ready to dive into, and we're excited to dive into it with you as we just kind of work through all of this together about what is AI and the impact of ministry. But just real quick, I'll do a couple of introductions. Let's see. I am running the slide deck. There we go. Cool. All right. So my name is Stephen Testone. I'm actually the Chief Product Officer here at Subsplash. And so I've been with Subsplash for going on 7 years now. So it's been like a thrill and a delight to be able to work with the platform and get to know so many of you and to get to hear about like how we can work together to better solve the problems and things that you're working on. In addition to being the Chief Product Officer, I'm also a church planter here in Georgetown, Texas. So if you don't know where Georgetown is, I usually tell people if you're driving from Austin to Waco, we're right in the middle. That's where you would find Georgetown. So, this is definitely something that's near and dear to my topic. I know what it's like to wear a lot of hats. I know what it's like to have, a lot of things that you'd like to do and always looking for more time to do it. So excited to be here with you. And then also with me today is Michael. So Michael, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, I am in Nashville, Tennessee. Moved here from California about a year ago and started this thing called Pulpit AI, and have recently joined forces with Subsplash, which I am so excited about. I too am a church planter. Planted a church in Los Angeles, California, and I'm now part of a church plant in Franklin, Tennessee. So I'm just really excited to just talk about all things AI and how we can help the church leverage this new technology.
Awesome. Cool. So let's dive in together. And just a reminder, because I know people will ask this, we are recording this and we will be emailing out a link to the recording of it as well. So, you can know that is on its way. All right. But before we dive in, we just wanted to get a little bit of a pulse from the room and just find out, how are you currently leveraging AI? Is it something you're currently leveraging? What does it look like? We could talk about that a little bit, but how are you currently leveraging AI in your ministry right now? Yes or no? So sounds like a lot of you are. Some of you are not. I can't see the exact results on screen here. Maybe if you can see them, just put them in the chat and I'll be able to share them. Okay, there's a poll tab. Go to the poll tab. There we go. There it is. Awesome. All right, so we've got 57% saying yes, 43% saying no. Awesome. All right, so we got one more question for you. Let's go and do that one as well. So when you're talking or looking at using AI, what type of content out of these options would you like help with most? Go ahead and get those votes. We'll do this one a little faster. We can get rocking and rolling. All right. Awesome. So we got a lot of votes in for that already. And the good news is, I mean, even these polls and what we're seeing right now is lining up with when we're talking to people about AI discussions. I don't know, Michael, you're in this a lot as well. Is it the same kind of results and stuff you're seeing? Definitely a lot for sermon, reels, caption, a lot for all of the above, and then maybe some in group guides and questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the sermon reels with captions is always the number one, number one for folks. So it's great.
Nice. All right. Cool. So we're going to move on. Here's a little bit about our agenda today and what we're going to be covering. So we're going to be talking a little bit about what is AI, because that is kind of a question that's on everybody's mind. Everybody's hearing it, but like, what is it? But then also more importantly, how can it empower your church and how should we be looking at it? How should we be using it? And then we're going to talk about using specifically, like, how can you leverage Pulpit AI to save you time and multiply your impact? And then we're also going to kind of follow on like how Pulpit AI can power your ministry impact, really beyond Sunday. What does like discipleship look like going throughout the week and how it can kind of like help you multiply those efforts on there. But first, not sure how everybody, how aware you are of Subsplash or what exactly we do, but I did want to share with you like our mission here at Subsplash. And this is like the official mission statement of the company. And I love this, that this is like the first line of it. We want to glorify God and proclaim Jesus is Lord. And what I love about this so much is that the my own personal life mission, and to be working for a company where it's like completely aligned with what I want to do. I This is it. This is what I'm sold out on. I'm all about it. Like, how do we go out there and how do we proclaim Jesus is Lord, right? And not to get like too much of my pastoral hat on, but this he is it, right? It's not even something like we make him. It's not something, but like Jesus is Lord. And how do we go out and proclaim that as much as we can, and everything around that? So, uh, glorify God and proclaim Jesus is Lord by building a great company that drives for humility, innovation, and excellence to delight billions of people on the Subsplash platform. So that is our heart. That is what we're thinking about every day. So many of the people in our company are just focused on that. And the way that we do that, obviously, we're a technology company. So we're looking at the lens of like, how can we help churches and empower churches to go out and do that as best we can? And that's through our platform, our tool belt of tools that we have here. And the way that we think about these when we're building tools is we really kind of look through the lens of like the discipleship journey. It's the same kind of thing that many churches, and you're asking the same questions. How can we be helping people along their journey? How can we be making an impact along the way? And if you'll notice there in the bottom right corner, something that we have are adding and continuing to look into and add and build upon is, what does it look like, and how can AI come in and make what we already have even better and make a bigger impact? So Michael, why don't we kick it over to you and tell me a little bit about like why Pulpit? What was the heart behind that? Why did you create that?
Yeah. Yeah, I've just always been didn't grow up in a Christian home and became a Christian when I was 13 years old, and have always just so appreciated the voice of pastors, in my life, and then kind of becoming a pastor. So for me, kind of as AI began to launch and hit the mainstream, one thing that was really apparent to me was that you know, AI and the opportunities that it presented really had the opportunity to amplify the voice of the local church pastor. And for me, being a local church pastor, I just really believe in the culture we live in now. That's a voice that is needed to be louder and more compelling than ever. And so, yeah, for me, it was literally just kind of knowing, hey, I know that every pastor now has this pressure, but also this desire to, hey, how do I create content for my congregation, right? They're on, so, I mean, we've seen the stats, right? People are on social media, some of them 20, 30 hours a week, just getting bombarded with messaging. Um, and, when I was a new believer, I didn't have social media to go to disciple me, right? And now, social media is discipling our people. So for me, it was really just about loving the church, loving pastors, and doing the best we could to help amplify their voice. And so the first step was honestly just, how do we take my pastor's sermon from a Sunday and turn that into, a devotional that we could send to our church every day of the week to just continue interacting with that. So, I would say it was that. And then it was just seeing kind of AI pop up and say, I'm just really passionate about the church not missing out on this opportunity to leverage such a revolutionary technology. And so, yeah, for us, it was just an absolute no brainer that we needed to just kind of put our hand up and say, let's try and build a solution for pastors. So that was the really the heart behind it for me.
Nice, man. I love it. And as I've gotten to know you and kind of like work on this stuff together, that's, just hearing from Michael's heart and what he was wanting to do with AI, and then what we have been able to do. And as we kind of go into this and dive into a little bit more with Pulpit, I think you'll start to see too why it's kind of been like a no-brainer for us to partner up together. We've got so much sermon content, and Pulpit AI is like taking that sermon content and doing, so much more with it, to kind of like you're talking about, like how do we get through the noise, and how do we do, more with what we've got, instead of just constantly trying to like do, squeeze in more hours in the day and things like that. So, I think too, we're going to hear from, this other church that's been using it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we, really early on, we actually brought on Patriot Church in Southern California, the Inland Empire, before we were even public. Like before anybody else was using it, we tested this out with about 20 pastors. And so really early on, I called Adam Mesa, who's a pastor, and just said, "Hey, I've built this thing. It's barely working, but can you start using it now and kind of help us build this?" And so, yeah, the team at Subsplash, the amazing team at Subsplash, just went and met with them and put together this incredible spotlight of how this church has kind of been with us from the very beginning and how they've kind of deployed it in the different areas of their church. So we're going to take a few minutes and watch this spotlight from Patria Church in the Inland Empire.
Everyone in some way is adopting technology to their comfort level. Our church is located in Rancho Cucamonga, California. My dad planted this church in our living room when I was 4 years old, and we had 12 people on our first Sunday. And 30 years later, we have about 14,000 members. Overall, I've been on staff here for about 13 years, kind of served almost every role. For many years, I ran content and creative and social media and everything like that. So I know I can personally speak to the fact of over the past decade, how tiresome that is and how much team it takes if you want to reach people. That can be really difficult for the average person, let alone if you're a church that only relies on volunteers. I mean, that's even more difficult. We were using Pulpit AI when it first came out. And the way we started generating and using the content for was we have small groups in our church that meet around the podcasts and the sermons. And so Pulpit AI immediately helps generate small group questions. We also have emails that go out that share recaps about the sermons and other things that we're using that for. And so that's helped our team a lot because they can have confidence to know, okay, we could use this. It's going to really benefit our people. Pulpit AI has saved our team immense amount of time. Traditional AI, you'd have to spend months and years to teach it to like we would as Christians. But when you just look at Pulpit AI and you get it under the hood and you see what value it actually has, really wasn't any concern for us. There wasn't any concern for our team. And I've had conversations with pastors that have trepidation with AI. And I've told pastors at the very least, try Pulpit AI. There's so many features that it offers. It's overviewing your sermons or your podcast. It's offering small group questions. It's giving you titles for social media. It's giving you quotes from your sermon. So, I mean, more than anything, the average church is not a large church and doesn't have a large budget to pay staff. And so I don't think there's any church in America that shouldn't be using Pulpit AI because there's roles that we would have had and we probably would have had to hire in the future that Pulpit AI has helped either supplement that or allow us to say, well, then we don't need someone to do that. They can actually do this in the future because any volunteer can take the audio, can take the video, and, within minutes, they can start producing content. We see that there's kind of a resurgence in excitement for people to find faith, and our team refines and gets better at discipleship and helping people succeed in their walk with Jesus, and utilizing technologies and features and things that help us accomplish our actual mandate. And so that's really deep within our church's heart. We're really excited about wherever that takes us.
Awesome. Love them. Have been super instrumental in just helping us build this tool up till now. So we're going to take a little bit of time and we're going to just talk about first and foremost, like what is AI, and then how can it practically empower the church. Kind of Stephen, back to what you said a minute ago. Even in like our first conversations between Subsplash and Pulpit AI, what I was just blown away with is like the first conversations weren't even about like technology, but it was about like how can we serve the church. And how can we not just use technology for technology's sake, but like how can we actually apply it to help churches? And I think that's in this conversation around AI and all the hype and hysteria around it. What is it? What isn't it? I think the thing that often gets lost is it's a really incredible tool when used properly, right? So first though, let's talk about like AI. There is a lot of conversation in culture about it right now. A lot of opinions, hot takes, but let's like basic what is AI? What does it do? What doesn't it do? Let's spend a few minutes talking about that and just kind of almost demystify what this technology is and how it works.
Yeah, no, for sure. And just a quick reminder, there is Q&A going on right now. So all throughout, be sure to jump in there, ask your questions and upvote so that at the end when we do our Q&A, like we'll be able to go through there and and kind of like sort by them. But what is AI? It's a great question, and I laugh a little bit because the originally when this question was asked, I came back with like a super technical answer about what AI was, and they were like, actually, that's going to melt people's brains. Like, don't. And to be fair, it was like someone asked me what time it was, and I came back with a watch. But I did want to talk a little bit about what AI is, just to kind of get like a general understanding, because there it is. It's, right now, it's getting thrown around so much. It's like, what is it? What is it not? Like, how can we use it? How can we get to a place where we think about it just like a tool? And really, at the end of the day, the simplest kind of explanation I can give is like AI is really just computers making like really good educated guesses about things. And really AI, it feels like it's been popping up all over the place, but it's been around for a while, and you've probably noticed it in other, similar things. So for instance, like autocorrect on your phone, like how is it knowing? How is it giving me a suggestion for what should that word be? Like how should it be corrected? If you've used tools like Grammarly or these other ones that have been giving you grammar suggestions and things. So some of this stuff has been around for a while. In kind of like a good analogy might be, if you've ever done like a Sudoku puzzle, right? You can use logic and you can use the rules of how it works to kind of try fill in the gaps. Well, computers are just doing that on like an exponentially larger level. It knows the rules of language, it knows the rules of word, and just with enough sentences and enough examples of things, and just with the power that computing has got to now, we're at a place where it's just gone up exponentially. So computers are just able to make like really, really good guesses. But the reason why it's important just to understand of like what is it behind the scenes, it really is just it's a lot of math and it's computers. And what's helpful about that is because the question comes up like, is AI good? Is it bad? What is it? It's just another tool. It really is like an amoral thing, and it's helping you, for the most part, getting from point A to point B faster on some things. And it's why it's like really good at doing things like, like repetitive tasks, or being able to summarize things, or being able to just like, take something that would have taken you a while and it can go in and kind of like fast a little bit on that. So, but I don't know, what are some other ways that you're kind of seeing it using, or might be helpful to explain?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you're right on. I think, yeah, I think the key context, the key thing to understand is like, and especially this kind of AI that we, use here at Subsplash, it can't understand context beyond like very pre-programmed parameters, right? So like you said, it is doing specific tasks based on specific sets of data. It's not sentient, it's not making decisions on its own. But yeah, I think anything like, Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant, I saw someone mention logos, right? Even any kind of like search tool that we use, anytime we search Google, like generative AI is and has been baked into that. And so I think, yeah, I think the reality is, it's easy to sort of like see all the stuff about AI is and think that it's human-like or conscious. And the reality is it's just not. It's like you said, it is a tool that is based on a bunch of data and a bunch of pre-built parameters for that data that is really good at pattern matching. And so I think when we think about this, it's really important to think about it that way and not get kind of overwhelmed with all the things that it is or could be, and really just go, what is the most basic use case for it? So no, I think that's totally right on.
Yeah. And honestly, like even when you use a tool like Google and you're putting in a search, like, hey, I want to learn more about this, and it just gives you a ton of results and things about it. It's the same kind of pattern and the same kind of thing, just done at like a bigger and more exponential level. And it gets you the information, faster on that. So, all right, that's just a little bit high level about what AI is. If there's other specific questions and stuff, we can go and dive into QA. But the main thing to walk away with is just understanding this is a tool, and like we want to learn how to use it correctly and how can it, help the church and use the right tool for the right job. So just want to talk a little bit about like AI and the church. So it's a big thing right now, but maybe Michael, talk a little bit about like how this is impacting pastors, and why do you feel like this matters for us? Why is it the thing that like the church should be caring about?
Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, when you think about this first iteration of generative AI and what it really, like the type of person it really unlocks the most for are communicators. Pastors, preachers, teachers are prolific. What other profession, what other craft does somebody have other than, preparing, writing, and preaching a sermon every single week, right? And the reality is that generative AI, when used correctly, can exponentially amplify what you can do with that, right? So I think, it really is, people, the question is like, is it overhyped? Is it not overhyped? I think, the reality is it's probably still underhyped in terms of what it's going to do to our culture, do to our world, but also just what it unlocks, right? So I think, to me, if we're looking at, hey, what is this compared to, even from a church perspective, it's like, what did the printing press do for, Christian publishing? How did it spread the gospel? Similar to television, radio, and the mobile phone. So I think it is probably the most transformative technology that we've seen um, in this current culture today. And I think, even more so, I think that the earlier we engage as the church and as Christians in this technology, the better opportunity we have to begin to shape it. So if we, I've kind of said this before, but if we were behind with social media, if we underestimated what social media would do to our people and to how it disciples and forms them, I think we have a duty to kind of put our hand up early on and say, no, we're going to start shaping these tools from the very beginning. So I think its ability to just take spoken word and repurpose that and leverage that and recontext that, it almost, in my opinion, it gives every pastor now has a publisher. Every pastor's a publisher or has a media team honestly as their assistant. So I think this technology unlocks something brand new for pastors that even previous technologies haven't unlocked. So I think it's absolutely massive for what we do as preachers and teachers. And yeah, so you brought up this slide here. This is a really, really cool stat, right? So 77% of U.S. pastors agree that God can work through AI. This is a Barna stat, and I think I was really encouraged by that, because when we first started Pulpit AI, there was a lot of conversation about, should churches use it or should they not? And I think if you ask the question, can God work through AI? That's similar to, can God work through, the internet? Can God work through social media? Can he work through the television and the radio? And so it's really encouraging to me that the church, the body of Christ across the board, has embraced this so early on. Any thoughts around that, Stephen, just in terms of like pastors embracing this kind of technology so early?
Yeah, no, again, and like you said, I think there's a lot of, obviously, I mean, there's a lot of people that showed up at the webinar. There's a lot of pastors, 77% saying, like, I think it can. I think people are still in that boat of trying to figure out, how do I use it? Like, what are appropriate places? Like everything, we do. And even here at Subsplash, we have to wrestle with, what could we do and what should we do? Right. And those are always questions that they're good and wise and proper to kind of like wrestle through those. And so just, I think by the more we gain understanding, the more we see kind of like examples of like, oh, it looks like this, or, oh, maybe here's a way that you can use it. I think, some things I'm even trying to, even internally with AI, I'm like, think smaller with it. And what I mean by that is sometimes when an idea is so big, it becomes overwhelming and you don't know where to start. But if you just start using like some really practical examples of like how it can work, I think people can start to see it. It's something that can really, again, AI is here to help enhance ministry and not like replace what we're doing and kind of looking at that. So I think that's a good kind of approach for us to take. All right. Well, speaking of that and kind of showing some examples and how it can work and how we can kind of like leverage this, definitely wanted to dive into a little bit about leveraging Pulpit AI. How can that help you to save you time and multiply your impact? And that even by just seeing, I think, some of the things that Pulpit can do, it might just start even to jog people's ideas of like, okay, I can start to see how I could, use this inside of my ministry and go through that. Yeah, so here's just, I don't know if you kind of like saw this quote as we were going through the video before, but there are roles that we would have needed and probably would have had to hire in the future that Pulpit AI has helped us with. And so the cool thing about this, I think it too, when we give examples of like what Pulpit can do, you're probably going to fit into one or two categories. Either these are things that you're already doing, and it's such a manual, tedious process that it's like taking hours and hours and hours of either your time or a volunteer's time. The other option too, that's I think really exciting, because I've talked to a lot of pastors that are like, I wish we were doing this, or this. I wish I had more time to create small group content. I wish I had more time to kind of like have these other materials that people are asking for, but I don't have the time or bandwidth to create. So it's like a combination of like saving time and making time. But it's really even cool to just be able to see that played out, inside of that little video that we saw earlier, and that kind of testimonial of how it's working. But just to explain at a high level what Pulpit does is, right now, it's able to take your sermon content, right? So you upload a sermon to it. It transcribes, I mean, it takes all of that and turns it into text. Okay. And from that text, it's able to generate, we say 20 plus because there's a lot of like default content that it creates for you. You can actually even go in and use it to create more content and different ways of doing that. So just like, let me rattle off just a few examples. So again, it takes your sermon content and it's using your content to do that. But you can take that same content from the sermon and say, hey, what does this look like in a small group setting? Like, we have small groups meeting this week. What could that look like for talkback questions? What could that look like for guides along that? Devotionals. This is like a really cool one where like, it takes the sermon content and then gives you, daily devotionals and breaks it up into smaller pieces and smaller snippets. So you can just kind of like interact with it and engage with it throughout the week. Weekly newsletters, something that you're sending out on a regular basis. Like, what does it look like to take that sermon content, bring it in as a recap, and other things. And then this one was obviously popular in the polls, and we've been hearing that a lot. But also, take the video content and, one, it automatically breaks it into smaller clips just right off the back. Like, here's some interesting parts that you might want to do, which has been cool for me. Even when I've been using it personally, it brought in some clips and some things that are like, oh, I didn't remember saying that, or I didn't remember doing that. But that actually was like a cool point and something, to share on. So anyways, just some examples of like how that works. But maybe Michael, talk a little bit about like how you've seen that, like we talked about, not only save time, but maybe even add more time that you hadn't been dedicating to it before.
Yeah, I think, the first time we ever, when we had the product barely working and we kind of sampled it, tested it for the first time, I was actually at our church in Los Angeles, and literally this girl, Sarah, who was led our small groups, led our communications, led our social media, and led our youth. I just said, hey, if you could use this to create, the stuff that you do every single week, what would this do? And she said, this would save me, 6 to 8 hours. And so we've been trying to like just test that with different users to see if it in fact does. And I think the cool unlock here is it's not, it's allowing you to do things maybe that you weren't doing before, or it's saving a staff member time. But what it's really doing is it's helping those staff members pastor people and disciple people. So for us, it was always, do we want our staff spending more time reading through transcripts and creating discussion questions, or could they go have, those 2 or 3 extra coffees that week with somebody that's new to the church or somebody that they're discipling? So for us, it was really always, how can we not just help churches create content faster, but how can we help free them up to, do the things that we all as pastors and ministry leaders want to be doing, which isn't always sitting behind a keyboard and working on administrative stuff, but being out, in and amongst our people. So I think when we hear stories like that, it's really inspiring to me, just that like, hey, it really does help. It helps move things along quickly on the content creation side, but it also just frees us up to do that real like embodied ministry, which we all know is so important, especially in 2025.
Yeah. So for sure. And I'm keeping an eye on the chat a little bit. And like, we've been talking about like a lot of theoretical stuff and a lot of even just kind of like showing what Pulpit does. But I thought it would be cool just to kind of show you guys like how I'm personally using it. And then you guys can maybe get a feel for like, how could this be, used in your workflow? And then we'll talk a little bit about what's coming, but then more than that, I really want to get some time to leave you guys some time for the Q&A, because I do see a lot of questions coming in and we want to have some time to go through that. So again, how does this work? How can you be using it? And again, why even the importance of it? Another recent Barna stat that 39% of Christians are not involved in any kind of discipleship. So, beyond Sunday morning, like, how are Christians being engaged? Like, what are we doing throughout the week? And that's definitely something that I think we can use technology to help, improve and help to leverage. Okay, so every week I'm using the live stream, and if any of you guys are familiar with like the whole media flow, Once it goes from the live stream, it goes immediately into your on-demand library. So at that point, again, I'm trimming the video that usually either happens Sunday night for me or Monday morning, just kind of depending on my day and what I have time for. But I'll take the video and I'll trim it down, and then after it's trimmed down, you can easily just like download the trimmed version. And the reason I do that is because if you're doing the live stream, you're usually recording like the whole message, but you don't really need a transcript of like everything that was happening in the song. So I always use the trimmed version of it first. So I'm just kind of like getting the sermon content in there. And then right now, the process is I download the video, I upload it to Pulpit. And again, you can do this at any point. You can upload, your sermon. You can actually upload documents and stuff before the sermon is preached to kind of get some of this information. But I go in and I upload the sermon. And then after the sermon is uploaded, like I said, it goes in and it processes it, it transcribes it, it takes the text, and then it runs that text, and the AI comes in and like helps generate all these extra bit of content. So some of the main things that I'm using it for right now, and I'm even still like exploring and figuring out better ways to utilize it. It's funny because the text description, the little summary paragraph description it gives to me back, and just so you guys know too, my bar is super high for like accuracy and like, is this actually saying what I meant to say? And is it getting across the points? And I have been blown away with like how in line that has been, with like, I actually meant to say that and it's getting that point across. But I will take the summary that it gives me and I'll use it and I'll copy and paste it back into the main media item, because it's better than the original summary that I came up with before I preached the sermon. And then after that, I'll actually there's a email recap that it gives you. That's like a nice email recap. You can copy and paste it and just kind of send that out as an email. I actually take that content, I copy and paste it, and I repurpose it slightly. So that's the cool thing. You don't have to take all of this content just as is. It's like a starting point for things. And I'll paste it inside of our messaging. That's what we use as our main channel for communications, and kind of blast that out as like the sermon recap during the week with a link to like the main full version so people can kind of go back and watch it. So anyways, that's just a little bit of my workflow right now and how I'm using it. Really interested in diving more into like some of the talkback questions and devotionals and like seeing how I can implement that. But there's been a lot of positive feedback, even just from my church, and using it. And so what's next for Pulpit AI and Subsplash? So here's what I'm really excited about. Like, one, the thing that Pulpit AI, you guys are working on right now is we actually do have like a major upgrade to our video clips part of the product. That is one, again, we've seen the most interest in that, and that's an area that we think we can like improve on. And so we've got a big upgrade that we're working on for that. But then big picture, what we're working on is like, how do the two of these work together? So again, I described that workflow that I have right now, but the end goal and what we're moving towards is like one click. You don't have to download, you don't have to re-upload, but like this is a seamless part of your workflow. And then again, how can we take that content that Pulpit is generating and not only create it for you, but help you, kind of get it out to your people faster, and kind of like speed up that process. So again, I know I'm talking fast on this one because I want to give time for some Q&A on here. But just so you know, if you want to try this out, you can go up today. You can actually go directly to Pulpit. You can sign up. You can talk to your client success manager if you want to go and sign up kind of like through Subsplash and have special pricing that way. But you can go and try it out. There's a trial for it. You can upload your sermon, and I think you'll quickly be able to have those aha moments and connect dots when you actually see your content. Read through the summaries it gives, like, challenge you to like test it out. Is this what you meant to say? And then kind of see the content that it generates throughout all of that. So we've got some links over here. You can click on them in the chat to kind of go directly to that. But all right, I rock and roll through all of that, a little bit of a fire hose, but that's all right. We're going to move on to some Q&A now. All right, let me pull those up and see what we got. Oh, all right. So we got some with 24 votes up here. And so I'm going to read them off, and just Michael, whoever, if we want to kind of rock through these and answer them. All right, with 24 votes, and I believe I can even put it on the screen here. There we go. Will the current Subsplash users get some level of this tool included in their subscription? Hint, it should even be at a limited feature set. So honestly, we're still working through exactly what this is going to look like and what it's going to mean. So for sure, we're looking at not only just how are we able to integrate Pulpit AI inside of it and make that like a seamless workflow, but also just AI in general. So beyond what Pulpit could do right now, and like how do we build that into the rest of what we're doing? So I would say, James, and everybody else who's interested in that, like stay tuned. We'll have like some big announcements around that coming up, but we are in the process of working through that and figuring it all out. So no exact details to give away on that just yet. All right. Let's tee up the next one here. We've got 18 questions. What tools are in current development and or testing for Pulpit AI? Are there plans to add a playground area for content creation that is not generated by the uploaded file? So, great question, Michael. You want to kind of take this and explain a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, so currently, Pulpit AI, your sermon, whether that's a audio, video, or text file, manuscript, notes, as the core piece, the core resource that AI is creating from. So the question here is, will there ever be, a product within Pulpit AI or Subsplash where, you can just kind of like open up a chat bot and kind of, go create whatever. Which I think is a great question. I think for us, again, our vision and mission is to amplify and empower the local church and the voice of the local church pastor. And so, especially as we talk about AI and how it should be used and shouldn't be used, I think for us, and Stephen, feel free to jump in on any of this, but I think there's something um, uh, really philosophical behind our current usage, which is I have to upload something that was created by a pastor, by a human, to then create content around that. So currently we're really focused on taking that content that's already being created by the pastor and the church leader and kind of amplifying that and making the most of it, and really reflecting their voice. So I think, do I know what we'll do in the future? I'm not quite sure, but I think with this vision of, let's amplify the pastor's voice, it's important to us that we're doing that and not just creating a place for, someone to come and create content around, any other things. I think in terms of some of the other features, I think, like Stephen has already mentioned, a really big upgrade to our clips. And not just the features in the clips, but the video processing. I've seen some people make some comments about that. We're kind of just looking at all of it and going, how can we make the entire experience faster, more seamless, and more integrated into workflows that you are already doing? So I would say that's really what we're focused on now.
Yeah, awesome. And I see another question on here about saving time and money, and it's a great question. I do feel like we've answered it a little bit in there. So what I actually wanted to do is jump to this next question though, because this one is just like a good one that we haven't even kind of touched on. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Michael. But what do you recommend? And this is good. This is where our heart should be. This is like how we should be thinking about these things, and like using wisdom and discernment all along the way to figure out like how do we utilize this tool the best. But what do you recommend churches do to utilize AI without losing kind of like the human element of it?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. And this is what I know a lot of churches are, talking through and discussing with their leadership teams now. I mean, I think this is a conversation that's been happening. I think, the way we like to frame it and think about it. And again, you said this earlier, so I'll say it now. Let me put my like pastor hat on for a second. It's like, what is embodied ministry? What is enhancing versus what is replacing, right? So I think when we think about how are we going to use AI, I think, does it enhance relationships? Does it enhance pastoral care? Does it enhance the day-to-day person-to-person ministry? And how can we focus more on doing that and use AI tools to kind of help us do the more administrative stuff? So I think, letting the human ministry work be human ministry work is, I think, where we, currently land. But I think when it comes to anything that's content creation, administrative tasks, making sense of data, anything again that you would sit in front of a computer and sort of do to augment your work, right? So if we're talking about sermon prep, for example, I know there's a lot of pastors right now talking about how do we use it for sermon prep or how do we not? And I think it's, again, if it's helping you brainstorm, if it's helping you make sense of or clarify thought. But I think, removing the human element from our ministry is certainly not what we think, how we think AI should be used. Any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, one other thing I would just
Stephen?
touch on it that's even kind of like cool again. One of the reasons I loved Pulpit and the way it was doing and how it approached things is, the human element is like the sermon content itself. And like absolutely that is like I have like deep core beliefs about, that the Holy Spirit should be driving that I want God's word to be speaking through me. I want that to be coming, from my heart, coming from, whatever God is calling me to do. And, what we're using that as the starting point for the AI. And so everything that is being produced after that is still it's still that content. It's still like the human aspect. It's still the human message behind it. It's just a way to like summarize and get that content and repurpose it in different ways. So I think just as every church, as you're wrestling through this thing, be asking yourself, is this something that's amplifying what we're already doing, right? Or is this something that is like, even just asking that question, is this replacing a human element that like should not be replaced? Like this is when you're reaching out and talking to people like that's something that matters. That's something that like somebody cares about me and they're reaching out, and that's why it makes a difference to me. And if we start automating too many things or doing that too much, like it can get to a point where, so I don't know, it's good to wrestle with, and I think it's something that we can think through. But I think once we get in and start using it, we start to get more and more ideas of like, oh, yeah, I do see how I could use this. But I want to be thoughtful around it.
And
Right.
if I could just add quickly, Stephen, sorry, I think the thing too is if you're maybe lead a church staff or something, I would say the assumption is your staff is probably already using some kind of AI or is at least experimenting with it. So I would say, most of the pastors I'm talking to are already having these just open conversations with their teams. What are we using it for? What are we not using it for? What is kind of a sandbox that we're willing to play in? And so I think just the more again that these tools are tested and talked about, I think every church is probably going to land on their kind of their own um, kind of endpoint of how they use it. Now they don't. So
Yeah, for sure. And also, I think we're about at time, but I also know that this is something that people are really interested in. So I'm willing to stay a few extra minutes if people are wanting to do that. But again, too, we'll be recording this if you want to, if you got somewhere you got to go and just want to be respectful of everybody's time. But I'm willing to jump in and take a few more.
damn.
Cool. All right, let's do it. Um, all right, next one up here says, if not done already, can you explain how Pulpit AI works for generating content and the moving parts Pulpit uses to make it happen? And without getting too much into the weeds, I can maybe give like a high level again of what it is. It goes through like a couple steps. And step one is, again, you uploading the video, and there's a little bit of processing time that it takes to do that. And just FYI, what that processing time is, it's not really the AI coming up with all this content at this point. Is it takes a while for the video to be processed and that audio from the video to be like transcribed and turned into text that we're using for that. And then again, that text becomes the starting point. So if you're wondering, like, again, where is AI getting this content and how is it using it? I've been, again, like thrilled to see like how much it's just using my content to do that. I have not at one point felt like it's been pulling in a different opinion or pulling in different things. It's just been like using my content for that. So after that text gets generated, that's where we're going through, and the actual AI part is coming in. And each one of these different pieces of content, it's saying, okay, can you take that text and can you help me build this with it, or can you help me build that with it? And the cool thing is too, that again, we have the content that we've generated, but like there's a lot of potential, a lot more things we can do. And even using the built-in Pulpit kind of like chat, you can start to like type in questions and ask things of your sermon content. If there's, a new thing that you're thinking of that like Pulpit doesn't generate from that sermon content, like you can start to save those and start to reuse those. So you can start to build up your own library of stuff that it can do. That's just like high level of process. Takes the video, uploads it, turns into text, takes that text and it turns it into some of this other stuff on there. All right. I'll dive in on the next one. Maybe this would be a good question for you, Michael. What are some unique hacks you've seen Pulpit AI users do that you didn't expect people would do with this tool?
I've been really blown away by how pastors have utilized this chat feature to create things like courses and ebooks and Sunday school lessons and all of that. So like I was even talking to a pastor the other day that basically took uh, five, I don't know, it was 6 different sermons, uploaded them all to Pulpit AI, got the transcript from each of those sermons, copy and pasted them into one giant document, right? So it's like, all 6 sermons together that they then re-uploaded to Pulpit AI. And so they're then now creating, an entire, I think they were literally doing like an ebook and a whole course based upon a sermon series that they just preached. So I think anything like that is really, really cool, where they're just taking that content that they've already built and preached and thinking, what are some creative ways to repurpose that? I think the other thing that's really cool is seeing churches use it for different age group ministries. So repurposing, taking that sermon, opening up the chat and kind of prompting it to, create like family style recaps for like Sunday night dinner for families, or how could this be retold to someone in Gen Z, or to, an 8-year-old, or, to a man or to a woman, or whatever that might be. So to see what people have done there is really, really cool, just to get ultra um, specific and personal, to the people that they're ministering to. So I'm always really inspired by that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, even the ebook thing, I hadn't thought about that, but like, yeah, pastors do that a lot. They'll maybe take their sermon series and like, how do I turn that into like, some more content? And again, even if it's not the final product, sometimes like it's a great starting point. Like, and so that's really cool to see some of those ones. All right, we'll do a few more and then we're gonna wrap up. Okay, I think we already did that one. Um, how is Pulpit AI different from other platforms you've seen out there? Yeah. This is an awesome question. Like, one, this is the thing. We're seeing AI stuff pop up all the time and saying like, okay, why Subsplash? Why Pulpit? Like, what is going to make, the difference there? And one of the things that I'm excited about is really um the thinking through and the power of like bringing it all together. So again, how are we saving time? How are we optimizing? Well, if you've already got your entire workflow for media and sermon, all this kind of content inside of Subsplash, not being able to have to jump to another tool to be able to use it is definitely something that I think is going to be like a really key differentiator, with what we're doing. But then also too, since we already have the apps and we already have websites and we already have ways of getting that content out, I think we're going to be able to do some like really interesting things that I'm not sure if anybody else is for like taking that content and like getting it out to people as well, instead of like kind of the just generating part of it. But I don't know, Michael, maybe from your lens, what are things that maybe you wanted to pay particular close attention to, or kind of like a particular focus on that you might talk about?
Yeah. Yeah. From the very beginning, we were always really obsessed with the AI side of this, and not just, hey, and listen, I mean, everyone uses this tool in different ways, but I think for us, our focus on, making sure that our, AI is really taking the pastor's voice and amplifying that. So the quality of the content that we're reproducing based upon the sermon, we take really seriously and that we're really focused on. So I think, again, the AI side of that, does it sound like the pastor? How can we make it sound more like them? And again, just that deep kind of like philosophical thinking around discipleship and taking what the pastor has already said. So for us, it's been kind of just that AI first. And I know that, especially with this relationship now between Pulpit and Subsplash, just that ability to continue to build and innovate on the AI side. But like you said, how these things all connect. Not just for things like workflow, but what does it look like when this AI has access to the whole sermon library of the pastor, right? And so yeah, I think again, we're just really focused on we want to build really innovative and really sharp human sounding AI solutions that take a pastor's voice and doesn't change it or doesn't add to it, but really amplifies it and helps it disciple people throughout the week. So
Cool. Awesome. All right. And the last one, I'm just going to summarize a few of them to talk about, but like there's kind of just questions around like, how can we make sure we entrust like the integrity of what's coming out or anything around that? And again, this is where it's just really helpful to understand what the tool is and what it's not. All right. And it's like, just how would you use the internet to, do research for a sermon, or how would you use it to read an article? I mean, it's a very similar thing in the sense of, okay, I would have a lens where I'm reading it, and I would like, is this helpful? Is this useful? But I'm also double checking it. I'm not just going to go out and just, blindly, use it in this kind of way. And the same thing with AI, when you understand this is a computer making its best guess at something. And again, I've been shocked at like how good it's been. But also it doesn't remove the complete need for like, okay, I'm going to double check this. I'm going to read this. And almost every AI tool you give gives like some kind of like warning around that. And again, it's not something to be afraid of. It's just something to know, like, this is part of the process and this is part of the technology, and what it's used for. But I don't know, Michael, what have you run into, and what would you say about that?
Yeah, I just think, in terms of the, privacy and the authenticity and the integrity and all that kind of stuff, I think, again, we're really focused on using it for what it should be used for, right? And so for us, it's so much of how you use it. A tool can be used for good or it can be used for bad, and so yeah, I just think each one of us is going to have our own convictions on how we do it. But I think from a product standpoint, it's important that we, don't add anything to the words of the pastor, and that we, again, we use this tool to uplift the church, to build the church, and to be a champion for pastors. And so I don't know if that answers the question. I think we can get technical about all of that, but I just think, philosophically, we're very much about making this be something that enhances and not, is cuts corners or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's awesome. The reason I wanted to touch on it a little bit, because that's when I find people and they have questions, it's in two camps usually when it comes to church. It's like, one, give me the practical, how can I, what to do with it? And then the other part is like the philosophical side of it, and like being able to wrestle with that. And I love that people are wrestling with it. I love like that we are, being careful and being thoughtful about it, as we should, as being stewards of God's word and the church and everything around it. So I love that we're having those conversations. I love that we're taking time to dive in. All right, we are going to wrap up now, but I will say, one, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for being on this journey with us. We're super excited about what we have going, but then also what we have. And honestly, like, your feedback and your questions and all this stuff, we do take seriously, and comes and plays a part in what we do.